Soundstripe.
Welcome back to Rival Sports. My name's JP.
I'm Matt.
And today we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. Training camp has begun for most NFL teams. There's a lot going on with the Raiders this year. There's high hopes for the fans. And we're going to walk through everything that has been happening with the team in the offseason and where they expect to be by the end of the year. If you're just finding us, which you probably are, please help us out, help us grow this channel, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're going to bring you content, not just on the Raiders, but also, the NFL at large and many other sports. So please help us out by liking and subscribe. So let's jump in first thing and just talk about some of the key Raiders offseason notes. Obviously you had a coaching change. You have the Davante Adams saga always going on. There's been a new logo this year. There's tons of roster competitions, new offensive coordinator, different player development, salary cap drama, like always for every team, and a lot of free agent signings. So just to start it off, give me your feelings on Antonio Pierce and if you think that was the right decision and how you think he's going to do this year.
I definitely wasn't on board with Josh McDaniels from the beginning, and I wanted the Raiders to keep Rich Bisaccia.
Okay.
It looked like when Bisaccia was on the sidelines and running the show, the team was more bought in. The Raiders didn't play the sloppy kind of football that we're used to over the last 20 years. And then McDaniels loses a couple of big games, gets fired on Halloween, and they put AP in place, and he's changed the attitude of the team. Since AP took over, the Raiders defense only allowed or held teams to under 21 points in 9 of their last 12 games. And it's a huge turnaround from some of the shit show teams that we've seen in Oakland and now Vegas. I really like the move of bringing Antonio Pierce at the helm because he brought in a ton of great minds around him to help him as a head coach. He's there to be a leader of men. He's leading the team from his position. He was a standout middle linebacker for the Giants, and he's been to the Super Bowl. He's taken down some of the best Patriot teams that we've seen in the Super Bowl. And so having that perspective and bringing some of the younger guys along and having the respect of some of the veterans, I think it's a great situation. It's a new era for the Silver and Black.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll always be appreciative of Antonio Pierce and those Giants teams for taking out the Patriots. But, for me, I think it's still, let's see how it goes. I mean, anytime
absolutely.
you get a coaching change midseason, there usually is that bump. This was an extended bump for sure. The last part of the season was very strong for the Raiders. They played very well. I think they gave up the least amount of points of any team. Points per game for those last few games that he was the coach. So for me, it's like, it was worth the risk compared to what they've done in recent years. They've been paying a bunch of clowns a lot of money. And it's time for a change and hopefully he can bring that. When it comes to Davante Adams, obviously there's been trade rumors since last year. The Jets and other teams checked in at the break last year. The Raiders were obviously going through a coaching change. They weren't going to just offload Davante. Davante's saying the right things. He wants to be here. But the reality is he's probably gone at the end of this year. So, I think it really matters how the season goes, whether they're going to be trading him or not at the deadline. But, let me know what you think about it.
Have you thought maybe Davante being the veteran that he is, that he's able to, he's played with Aaron Rodgers for a long time. Aaron's been a lightning rod for a long time, and he kind of laughs it off and plays jokes with the media and uses his phrasing he'll play with and to get a certain rise out of the media. There's a huge controversy at quarterback. The word around football fans and the NFL is that the Raiders don't have a starting quarterback. Aidan O'Connell didn't look all that impressive. he got a vote of confidence from Brian Hoyer, regardless of what you may think of Brian Hoyer as a playing quarterback in the NFL. He's been around that league for a really long time, and he thinks Aidan O'Connell should be the starter. And I think that, with Devontae being on receivers and him being a veteran in that team, there's a chance that he's just creating some of this distraction because there is a rookie head coach, right? There's potentially a second-year quarterback under center starting. There's been quite a few changes on the offensive line. They're going to be much younger this year. And if Kolton Miller can't stay healthy, they're going to have a rookie left tackle, and they're going to have a rookie right guard. And so if you are comfortable enough in yourself to take on all that heat from the media, and it's his name only going to one team, it's not, hey, Tampa's checking in, or the Texans are checking in, or then, we saw a week or two ago, somebody floated out, I think what was the handle? Pretty Ricky something,
Yeah.
right? Brandon Ayuk for DeMonte. And that kind of shit comes up in offseason.
That's not happening.
Because it just gets people talking about the NFL in July and June, right? I don't think those are stories at all. I don't think the Raiders have been in the news at all this offseason in a negative way. You can have your opinions about how Devontae looked on receivers, but man, when we were kids, when we were growing up, everything you saw about the great receivers is they were divas. Chris Carter, Michael Irvin, Jerry Rice, right? Everybody, Randy Moss, everybody had some sort of, they're a diva in this way or that way. I don't think Devontae's doing anything out of the ordinary. And even their offseason signings that have come in, nobody's been in the news in a negative way, which is not typical for a Raiders offseason. It's always been, and you always bust my balls about it. What are the Raiders going to do this time? And the Henry Ruggs situation happened. It's like, oh man, Antonio Brown happened. Right? There's always something happening. None of those stories have been tied to the Raiders this offseason. And I think that's why Antonio Pierce makes such a good decision for him to lead the Raiders this year.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I give you a hard time because I think we both go through it with our teams. It's if it's not the GM, it's the coach. If it's not the coach, it's the owner. If it's not the owner, it's the disgruntled players.
And it's for both organizations.
We can't just have nice things.
No.
We can't just have a clean, easy season. I understand the stress there for sure. It is what it is. Let's talk about how old this damn team is. So the Raiders, they've traveled around a bit, but they've been around for 65 years now. They have I don't know if you saw kind of the 65-year logo. But it's pretty sharp. Let me see if I can bring it up.
It's a throwback to the AFL logo.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if it's Starter or Fanatics, or if Fanatics is selling a Starter jacket, but they've got the old school oval with the pirate and the mask, the original AFL logo, on a Al Davis white Starter jacket.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty sharp. I do like the pirate aspects of it. One thing I will say is, I'm a Jets fan. Our fans have been very loyal to a team that has sucked for a very long time. Most of the fans have never seen true success outside of a few seasons, but they are the second most ticket buying fans in the league. And they show up for the team, and the team does absolutely nothing for them. The ownership does nothing for them. The team on the field does nothing for them. And I was really impressed to see what the Raiders did. So let me show you this video, but this was something that they sent to season ticket holders.
Oh, yeah. The Sun's treasure chest.
Pirate, blustering in from sea, with a rollicking song he sweeps along, swaggering boisterously.
Oh, so cool.
His face
I appreciate that effort as a fan, especially for these season ticket holders, especially in Vegas.
Shout out to Gorilla Rilla there in the picture.
Those tickets are expensive, so I appreciate that they're trying to turn a corner here. They're in the new stadium. They have a new coach. They have exciting younger players. They have a good defense. We'll have to see how it goes. Is there anyone in terms of roster competition that you're excited about? I mean, obviously, we have to see what happens with the quarterback. I think the Raiders probably have an idea of who they want starting and who they want in the backup role. But, are there other positions that there's going to be some pretty good competition at?
We'll see who gets the carries. If Zamir White's not playing during preseason, I expect Alexander Madison to lead the running backs or be the lead backup running back, to Zamir White. Last year with the Vikings, Madison had 7 carries within the 5-yard line and totaled only something like 7 yards or 5 yards and no touchdowns and 3 fumbles. And so I don't have a ton of faith in Alexander Madison as a backup running back. He has a potential to be a starting running back in the league. He's been a starting running back. When he was coming in for Dalvin Cook, he was a burst of energy with the Vikings, and I just don't know if we're going to get that guy. The person I'm excited to see is what Dylan Lobby, I think he's drafted in the 5th round by the Raiders, ran a 4.5 at the 40, but he's very, very explosive. He reminds me a lot of Austin Eckler. And if he can take a step and be a check down, if he can be a change of pace back from Zamir White, if he can get outside the tackle, that's going to be a great pick for the Raiders. And then another position, it's not really going to be a competition. It's if this player can take the next step, and that's Tyree Wilson. They moved him from outside defensive end, and they're moving him more inside. So it'll be Malcolm Kuntz and Tyree Wilson inside when he comes into play, and it'll be Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby. And if Tyree Wilson can be disruptive, he's 6'7", 289 pounds, monster athlete, just was real slow off the ball last year. John Jenkins has been a stud defensive tackle for the Raiders, but he's getting up there in age. And once you have, a knee injury here or an ankle injury here, that next year with those big guys in the trenches, that usually comes back to bite them. Something will come up. Tyree Wilson was healthy all of last year. No injuries reported. Didn't miss any time. He's a big, strong kid. I hope that he takes that next step and challenges and turns that into a competition where he's earning that starting position at the defensive tackle spot.
Yeah, and I think, obviously we have to see what the draft picks do, the recent ones. Tyree Wilson, Tommy Eichenberg will be interesting to see how they kind of grow this year. I think what could be exciting and very helpful for whoever the quarterback ends up being is running some 2 tight end sets. Give a lot of options to these quarterbacks. Let them get the ball out of their hands really quick. So, we'll have to see how some of the younger players grow throughout the season and throughout the offseason.
In the draft, the Raiders drafted a bunch of guys that have exceptional size at corner. Their highlight tape from Trey Taylor is a safety out of Air Force. His highlight tape is insane. He's making big hit after big hit, kind of like how Taylor Mays looked at USC. Not sure if Trey Taylor will translate, if he's going to be better than Taylor Mays was, but it's a lot of that style, playing downhill, filling in on the run. I saw Patrick Graham this morning talking about Bobby Spillane, who looks exactly like Tommy Eichenberg, had the same kind of scouting report as Tommy Eichenberg. I thought Tommy had more tackles last year. He only had 40 for Ohio State, but he was their lead dog in the middle. He plays great against the run. No issues about getting off blocks or getting sealed inside by linemen. I don't think Tommy's going to be somebody that's going to challenge Bobby Spillane, but he will challenge Luke Masterson. Luke has been a phenomenal athlete, but is always chasing in coverage. And when you've got that one tight end in the division that is running away from everybody, you need to be able to cover him. And Luke hasn't done the best job there.
For sure. Another big off-season move was the hiring of Luke Getsy. It's sparking discussions around potential improvements in the red zone. Very important for a team like this to not miss out in the red zone, to take advantage of it every time they're down there. They're not going to have, potentially they have a strong defense, but with the offense not necessarily being the strongest, they need to improve there. What are your thoughts on that hire?
I think that's what Brock Bowers is for. I really think that's probably the biggest issue that came out of last year. They will stop a lot of teams from scoring. They were able to get within the 20, within the red zone plenty of times, and they couldn't convert. Some of that was Jimmy. 2 of those games were Brian Hoyer. Aidan O'Connell was throwing for 200 to 220 yards. It's not going to get it done if you can't convert inside the red zone, right? You've got, like you were talking about, 2 tight end sets, Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers, both really good receiving tight ends in college. Want to see that translate to this season. You're going to have Devontae and Jacoby Myers that are going to be able to play same side, in the slot, outside. They can play every position. And they've got a guy that is just as fast as the top flight receivers in Trey Tucker. He's got a lot of hype in this offseason going into camp. With Michael Gallup retiring this week, Trey Tucker now slides into that 3rd, 4th wide receiver spot where he's going to be getting a lot of looks in things like the jet sweep and being able to run a little misdirection plays. And if you're going to be sending, if you've got Devontae, Jacoby, and Brock Bowers on one side, and you can run a motion of Trey Tucker to get some space, you can run that little stick route that the Eagles run with Devontae Smith all the time. And it just creates 3-4 yards of separation, and he can sneak into the end zone right there.
For sure. Big kind of amount of off-season signings this year. I think one thing that needs to be watched a little bit is the salary cap situation with the Raiders. They are a little bit tight when it comes to that. But in terms of free agent signings, they brought in guard Cody Whitehair. They brought in running back Alexander Madison, tight end, another tight end, Harrison Bryant, obviously Gardner Minshew, and then defensive tackle Christian Wilkins. What are your thoughts on those additions? Do they fill holes well enough? Are they exciting at all?
Oh, Christian Wilkins is so exciting. Raiders drafted Cleveland Farrell instead of Christian Wilkins 4 or 5 drafts ago. This gives them a really good tackle inside of Max Crosby or Malcolm Kuntz. Those 2 edge rushers can flip-flop to either side, and they're going to be a problem. Malcolm Kuntz's last 7 games were incredible. Teams were sliding protection to stop Crosby, and Kuntz was picking up the slack. So I expect him to have a monster year. Christian Wilkins was talked about by Patrick Graham today as somebody that got paid, came in, and has just gone to work, has bought in, following in Max Crosby's lead. They've got rookie defensive tackles going through drills, and Christian Wilkins is putting his arm around guys, bringing them through, teaching them how to be a pro. And that's not what you hear in the Raiders offseason ever. When Richard Seymour came over, when Warren Sapp came over, it was never that kind of offseason story. It was this guy's not showing up to practice on Tuesdays because he doesn't feel like it. Was more the story than what you're getting out of this offseason.
Yeah, for sure. And you also had some kind of notable re-signings, so bringing back players that performed for you last year. You brought back your center, Andre James. Amir Abdullah is coming back. And then offensive tackles, Adam Butler and John Jenkins. So, trying to keep some of the guys together from the previous regime. And then, obviously with a lot of the new picks from the draft and then free agent signings, bringing some fresh blood to hopefully, get past, what was it, eight wins last year?
Yeah. We'll see how the offensive line looks. They were battling through a bunch of injuries last year. It was not pretty. They were serviceable, and Josh Jacobs was hit behind the line of scrimmage more than any other running back in the league last year. So what he was able to make out of that season is why he got paid by Green Bay, and he's going to a good offensive line there. Let's see what this offensive line looks like. I'm not real excited to see that Kolton Miller and Jackson Powers are on the PUP list to start training camp. So it's a rookie
before it becomes a problem. You just want to make sure that they're in shape when the season starts.
But like you said, we can't have nice things. And as soon as I see 2 guys that are supposed to be the 2 best on the offensive line are hurt to start, it makes me nervous. I can't help it. Yeah. I'm scarred.
No, I understand. Let's talk about the draft a little bit more. We touched on Brock Bowers a little bit. Round 1, pick 13. The Jets and other teams passed on him. He kind of fell to you guys. Mm-hmm. Definitely considered a best player available type pick. I don't think you guys need a tight end, but it is a luxury pick where if it works, it's very rare that a tight end works in the first round, year one. It usually takes time for these guys to grow. And first round tight ends traditionally aren't necessarily the top tight ends of the league. So he's very different. He's that kind of hybrid between a tight end and a wide receiver. I think there's a lot they can do with him. Like you said, they'll probably use him in the red zone. Very versatile player. He should have an immediate impact. We don't see it that much with tight ends, but maybe he can break the mold. He's definitely known for, yak. So that's something that if they can get the ball in his hands, he might be able to do a lot for them this year.
I'm really excited about Brock Bowers. I didn't think they were going to go in that direction at all. I thought they were going to go tackle. They drafted a tackle, later. I can't remember. Third round, maybe. Delmar Glaze out of Maryland. I can't remember what pick that he was. So they took a tackle later. They took guard Jackson Powers Johnson at 44. And then they took Dylan Lobby in the 5th round. So they addressed some of the areas on the offense. I thought they should have gone a little higher in the draft for a running back. They're really high on Zamir White. I didn't think he had the speed to run away from teams, but if they're going to go with a thunder and lightning combo of Zamir White between the tackles and Dylan Lobby outside or Madison outside, and that's, Madison's going to get 8 to 11, maybe not even 11 carries. It seems like a lot, but 8+ carries where he's going to get 4 or 5 yards. That's a great running game between those two. I don't know that. I don't know what they're expecting out of Brock Bowers blocking, right? And I think that's where the tight ends usually have the struggle. TJ Hawkinson was on the Bussin' podcast talking about when he was a rookie that he was supposed to hold his block for a split second and then go out into the flat, and they're in the red zone. He doesn't even chip the defensive end or the linebacker that's over him and just goes to the flat, catches a touchdown anyway, and Stafford ripped him a new asshole. And I think those are the reasons why tight ends may not have as much success. But if you're sliding Brock Bowers, if he's lined up next to the tackle and then you put him in motion and now he's on a linebacker, he's a monster athlete. He's going to win that mismatch every time.
All right. Let's jump back into it. I don't know how that's going to cut up, but we'll clean it up. So we're back. We were in the middle talking about the draft. You were talking about some of the earlier picks. I think the guard you picked up, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, I think he's going to be versatile for you, which is what you really need at the offensive line position because anything can happen. If you look at my Jets the last few years, with players having to move around, players getting injured all over the place, having a versatile guys is super valuable. In college, he allowed just 1 quarterback pressure on 48 pass blocking snaps. So, I think he was potentially the highest graded college center. He might play center, might play guard. We'll see how that kind of pans out for them. I don't think you need him at center right away. So maybe he'll just kind of be guard, backup guard. What do you think?
JPJ, he's going to be starting right guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought when they drafted him, they were going to move him to center, but then they brought back Andre James.
Yeah. And they might. Maybe he wins it by the end of the season, but if you have someone who has consistency with at least one of the quarterbacks to start the season, that's probably safer.
And I think it kind of depends on Luke Getsy's offense as to where, who's more athletic, who's better in motion. There's not many centers. Jason Kelce is the only one that kind of comes to mind that can, from the center position, be pulling and be part of the offense and be in front of that jet sweep. I don't think Andre James can do that. And I don't know if JPJ can do that at the NFL level yet. We'll see when it starts. But if he's going to play guard and you've got 2 guys that can interchange at those positions, it's a nice problem to have.
Yeah, for sure. Then we mentioned offensive tackle. I think it's good to always load up on offensive tackle, especially with the quarterback situation where it is.
You went through 30 offensive tackles the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, listen, it's an important position. Some felt he's a reach where they picked him. He's good pass blocking. He might be better suited for interior line position. So we'll see what happens with him. Pick in round 4, you got a new cornerback, Richardson out of Mississippi State, strong against the run. He missed only like 3.9% of his tackles attempts in 2023, so that's always a good sign.
He's 6'2", ran a 4.3 40, ran a 10.7 in the 100 back in 2019. The dude's big, strong, and he's got track star speed. If it's Nate Hobbs on one side and Jack Jones on the other, and then they're going to slide Nate in to play the slot corner and bring Richardson in to play the outside. If he can fill in that position, because last year was Amik Robertson, and I'm as tall as Amik Robertson, and in the league, it's a really hard position to play undersized like that. He made a ton of great ball hawking plays, but he's gone. So if you bring in somebody with that same speed, but is 6'2" and can go body for body with some of the bigger receivers, that's going to be a huge upgrade for the Raiders defense.
Yeah, for sure. 5th round linebacker, Tommy Eichenberg. We talked about him a little bit out of Ohio State. Definitely a productive linebacker with 75 combined run stops in 2022 and 2023. Fits Antonio Pierce's defensive mentality. So that could be a big part of the pick. Round 6, running back Dylan Lobb. I think in general, a team should draft a running back every single year. You never know what you're going to get, and it's really running back by committee in this league. You have a bunch of running backs we've already talked about, but it's an important enough position where you can't rely on one person, and each year someone could show flash and be in there. Maybe he's a third down back. He has some receiving skills out of the backfield, so that could be a positive. Round 7, you went with safety out of Air Force, Trey Taylor. He was Jim Thorpe Award winner, best defensive back in college football in 23. High PFF grade.
Put that kid's tape on, man. If you like the hitting, the old school safeties, oh boy, is he gonna make you smile.
Well, they don't let you hit anymore, so you gotta be careful. But and then you finished it up with cornerback MJ Devonshire out of Pittsburgh. Good secondary depth. Well, with those last round picks, who knows? So
right.
I think the Raiders with the offseason and then with the draft, they focused on offense early. They addressed tight end, offensive line needs in the first 3 rounds. They shifted to defense. They added depth at cornerback, linebacker, safety. The draft class aims to strengthen both sides of the ball and provide potential competition at key positions. So all in all, pretty strong drafts for the Raiders. I think there's some key positions, though, that we need to look at going into the season. These are positions that were considered a weakness for the Raiders heading into 2024. Cornerback, it's consistently mentioned as the biggest weakness on the Raiders. Maybe they solve for some of that this year. They have Jack Jones, Nate Hobbs, who primarily plays in the slot. I think there's a lack of dependable kind of a second guy out there on the outside cornerback position. Competition for this between Brandon, Jacorian, and the rookie hopefully turns into a positive for you guys. But that's going to be a pretty important position in a defense that is strong, but you got to keep those big plays down.
Jacorian Bennett had a lot of hype coming out of training camp last year, and he was in the rotation early, and then was benched a few games in the second half of the season, didn't play as much. And I don't know if that was the change in defensive philosophy, if there was something inside the building that AP didn't like and wasn't playing him as much, if it was just kind of rookie learning curve was a little steeper for him. He's a great athlete and can definitely play in the league. Brandon Faison is a returning corner. He flashed in a couple of big plays for the Raiders a couple of years ago, was not with them last year. And then Richardson, the size and speed, that's what you want in a starting corner.
Yeah, for sure. Overall, I think the defense probably needs some depth. They're definitely getting a little bit
Yeah.
older. So they at least on the line, they did a little bit of work on that, but we'll see how they hold up this season. It's definitely something that they need to focus on going forward to keep the defense strong. But I think when it comes to position groups in general that need to be kind of looked out for, it's definitely defensive line, wide receiver, left tackle is something where we'll see. But even center, should hopefully be strength for them and not a weakness. Linebacker, it's young and tough. Safety, can be a strength. They added some more this year. Let's see what he can do. And they need to be strong at special teams this year with the new rules. We'll see how that unit holds up. They didn't really do much with the special teams this offseason. I don't think they were a weakness last year, but they weren't a strength either. I don't think they had a lot of all-pro people. So
you can count on Carlson to nail big kicks. AJ Cole was a Pro Bowl punter, and so that's a strength of the special teams. Amir Abdullah coming back, he's sure-handed back there. He's got plenty of speed to return kicks. With the new rules, who knows how many kicks are going to be returned. I wonder if there's a stat out there somewhere about how many kicks have been, or how many more touchbacks we've had year over year. I'm just curious because the kick returner is not exactly a huge playmaker anymore with the way that they've changed kickoff and and the way hitting is refereed now in the league. So if your two of your best players or two of your Pro Bowlers are your kicker and your punter, it's a pretty solid special teams unit. They didn't give up a ton of yards. They get after special teams when they're on defense. I don't think it's going to be a huge significant issue for this team. Linebacking core, yeah, I think that's the biggest position of concern, and then right behind that is going to be the offensive line. Divine Diablo's 25. He had an injury last year. Bobby Spillane's only 28. They brought in Eichenberg in the draft, so they are pretty young, but they're pretty thin and dealing through injuries last year. And again, if you have an injury, a significant injury where you're going to miss time, it's going to come back. It doesn't leave these football players. It's a bunch of car crashes and a gladiator sport. So, I would like to see some more depth at linebacker, but that's because of who's in the division. You've got to guard Travis Kelce. You've got to go up against Justin Herbert, who loves to throw to the tight end, right? And then there's Russell Wilson, who, has done a great job of extending plays in his career. Or sorry, not Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's gone.
Yeah.
Talking about Sean Payton's offense.
Yeah.
I forgot for a moment that he went to Pittsburgh, right? But
I wouldn't worry about Sean Payton's squad this year. They're freaking terrible.
I hear you on paper, but you bring in a Hall of Fame leader like that, and who knows what they can produce. All their quarterbacks are all mobile. And if there's one thing I've noticed with the Raiders, no matter who's on defense, who the coach is, who the defensive coordinator is, a mobile quarterback always extends games, extends plays, and burns them. It happened with Gardner Minshew when he was in Indy. He ran for multiple first downs, extended that game, and got the Colts a win.
Yeah. In terms of Raiders defense, I think the line is definitely strong for them. You have key players like Max Crosby, Pro Bowl performer, 27 sacks, 175 quarterback pressures in the last 2 seasons alone. Malcolm Kuntz, definitely emerging edge rusher with 8 sacks, 52 quarterback pressures just last year alone. Christian Wilkins, definitely, as you said, a major free agent acquisition, and he's going to help with both run stopping ability and pass rushing. I think overall defensive rank by Bleacher Report was like maybe 8th best. So hopefully they can continue and perform even better this year. especially under Antonio Pierce. So he's definitely going to be focusing on that side of the ball. There are some secondary concerns, but maybe that was cleaned up this offseason. We'll wait and see as training camp goes on. The defensive end, defensive tackle, linebacker, cornerbacks, those are the key positions for them. And we'll have to see how those units grow throughout the offseason and into the season. Potential breakout players, in my mind, I'm thinking Kuntz and Tyree Wilson. What are your thoughts for this year?
I think Jacoby Myers is going to have a monster year. I think he's underrated at the position. There's going to be a lot of schemes to stop Devontae, and when they're running a 2 tight end set, it's going to be Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers, or both good pass catchers. And so if you've got Devontae, Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers, and then Jacoby Myers made a ton of explosive plays last year. You can't double everybody. You can't shift the coverage if Devontae's out right and you've got Brock Bowers lined up tight left and then Jacoby Myers is somewhere in the slaughter all the way out. You can't shift the defense all the way to Devontae's side. So are you going to leave Devontae one-on-one? Please. But if you're going to slide a safety over there, and now Jacoby Myers is one-on-one, he's got the side strength and speed to be a number one receiver. I think he's going to have a monster year this year.
Yeah. And on the offensive side, I mean, there's a couple of things that will have to be watched this offseason. Obviously, new offensive coordinator, bringing in a fresh scheme. It's a full install. So we're going to see how that goes during minicamp. Well, we saw how it went during minicamp. We'll see how it really goes during training camp. The quarterback competition, if there is one, will be ironed out, I'm sure, soon enough. The offensive line will be a focus during this training camp, seeing how they gel together, seeing how they come together. The passing game coordination is the thing to watch for. Scott Turner serves as the coordinator there, and he's going to be working closely with Getsy to get that part of the game really buttoned up. So there's a lot of new additions, new scheme. Everyone's kind of learning. That's going to be definitely something really important to hopefully come out of the offseason as a strength. If they can just play 50% better than they did last year, the defense will win them a lot of games for them.
I agree. I saw Vegas had their odds set at 6.5 wins, or the over/under set at 6.5 wins.
Less than last year. So did you take the over? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I had to. Call me a homer. Don't care. I'll crush them when they deserve it. But I have a lot of high hopes for this team. But this is both of us come July. The season's around the corner. We can smell it coming. I'm going to head to Tahoe for our annual vacation here soon, and that's all I'm going to be hearing from my uncle is, what are the Raiders going to be doing this year? He's going to get all excited, and this is what we do every summer. We get super excited for the football season to start, and if the Raiders do come out and go 2-5 or 2-6, 2-7, if they're 2-7 at the break, I don't know where I'm going to be. I might go to Mexico and hide for the rest of the year.
Well, if they're 2-7 at the break, I know where Devontae is going to be. It ain't going to be on the Raiders. All right, so looking at the upcoming...
if he finishes his career with the Raiders, go ahead.
No, go for it.
If Devontae finishes his career with the Raiders and never wears a Jets uniform, I demand an apology.
I don't even necessarily care. The only way he's on the Jets is if that's our biggest need at the bye week, the trading deadline. We've ironed out a lot of our issues, but we think we have a good wide receiver group. It's probably wrong. Mike Williams could still be hurt and be worthless, and then we do need Devontae. I think it's just a nice to have, and the connection with Aaron Rodgers, they would love to play together again. The Raiders are not going to keep him next year. He will probably be gone unless they have some amazing season, which Vegas doesn't predict. But so again, it's a situation where if they are 2-7 at the bye, he's going to say bye. You saw how he behaved last year on the Netflix show. He wasn't happy. He doesn't want to be with some quarterback figuring it out. He wants to put up stats. He's a good teammate to an extent. To an extent.
That was all Jimmy G. That was all Jimmy G.
Yeah, Jimmy G, not the guy.
And then when Brian Hoyer came in, that was another scene. Was Devontae open on a fade route in the end zone, and Brian Hoyer couldn't make the throw.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit. The schedule for the Raiders is decently difficult, especially going into the bye week at the Rams, home against the Chiefs, and then at the Bengals. That's going to be a defining part of the season. But you start at the Chargers, which I don't know where I stand on that game yet. I think you should be able to beat the Chargers, but it's two teams in decently similar situations, dealing with a new coach, new setup, new scheme. Both have strong players. I think the Raiders should edge them, but you're still starting on the road at the Chargers. Week 2 is at the Ravens. Not ideal.
Not on the road.
What?
That's not on the road, dude. That's Los Angeles. That's in LA. That's not a road game for the Raiders. Come on.
That's fair. That is fair. I forget how many cities you guys have been in. But
you play in Jersey. Zip it.
Yeah, listen. I think the Chargers is a win. The Ravens will be a tough game versus the Panthers at home. That'll be a nice homecoming, easy win there. Then you are home against the Browns, at the Broncos versus the Steelers. So who knows? Maybe the Browns might be a slightly difficult game. But yeah, at least 3 out of 4 of those are W's.
Yeah.
And then you go into that stretch of Rams, Chiefs, Bengals, where you really want to take 2 out of 3. You'd be happy maybe with 1 out of 3. It's a tough stretch right there.
Yeah, and especially the way that the Raiders are approaching Patrick Mahomes right now is not the best way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then coming out of the bye, Dolphins versus the Broncos at the Chiefs. Yeah. Okay, so let's just go through the list. You tell me win-loss. Chargers.
Win.
Ravens.
Loss.
Panthers.
Win.
Browns.
Win.
Broncos.
Win.
Steelers.
That's in Pittsburgh?
Versus home.
So they're at home? Take that win.
Okay. Rams.
Oh, that's a coin flip for me right now.
Also in LA.
Yeah, it's not a home game for the Rams. They did it last year. I'll take that to loss.
Okay. Versus Chiefs.
KC wins.
At Bengals.
Bengals win. So I think it's 5-4 at the break.
5-4 at the break. At Dolphins.
And the coin flip is that Rams game where I think if they win that and they go 6-3, they'll be real happy.
Yeah, that'd be good. At Dolphins.
Oof. What's the weather like? Is that in the that's going to be a depends on health, because if the Dolphins are healthy, I think they win that. But if the Dolphins are going through some issues, or if Tyreek does some silly stuff again, then the Raiders can go in there and win that game.
Versus Broncos.
Win.
At Chiefs.
Loss.
At Broncos. At Buccaneers.
And they never ever show up on the East Coast, but that Buccaneers team is not very good. Can I bet the 0-0 greens on that one? They need to win that game, but I'm not sure that they'll show up on the East Coast, especially middle of the season like that. That's usually laying an egg for them.
Yeah. Versus Falcons.
It's a win.
That's a win. Jaguars versus
win.
Home. Saints at Saints.
Ooh, little Derek Carr revenge game.
Could be.
Saints are not that good. I think the Raiders can win that game.
And then home against the Chargers.
Win.
Okay, so you have the Raiders at either 11 or 12 wins, depending on how the Buccaneers game goes. So that's your prediction now. We'll come back to this right before the season starts. We'll do another review of the Raiders once we see people actually playing and hitting each other. Obviously, you're very high on the season, as we all are in July, like you said. So good job on that. We'll finish up.
I was not high on this team when Josh McDaniels showed up. I was not high on this team.
No, it's the worst. It's a kiss of death. He needs Brady to win. But awesome. I hope people enjoyed this kind of training camp preview of the Raiders. We'll be doing lots of different NFL content from all other sports, not just Raiders. We'll do all other teams as well. Please like and subscribe, and we'll be back with more shows soon. Bye.
See ya.